In the past, I discussed, in my previous YouTube videos, I discussed various voting systems around the world for parliamentary and presidential elections. How your vote is counted and how seats are distributed, etc. Tonight, I will discuss something equally important in the overall makeup of a legislative body. This is equally an important factor in election results. And that is political culture, or voting patterns. There is this conventional wisdom that a non-proportional system creates a two-party system, creates government with only two strong parties in the parliament, whereas a proportional system creates multi-party politics. Now, this is only sometimes true. Sometimes. Let's look at the conventional wisdom, and then let's look at unconventional results, with naming various countries as examples. First, let's look at a non-proportional system creates a two-party system. In a non-proportional system, which creates two strong parties, countries like the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom have a relatively stable two-party system. Most of the time, it's Party A and Party B. I emphasize most of the time because currently the United Kingdom and Australia both have hung parliaments. But for the most of the time, it's stable. It's Party A, Party B. Now, why only two political parties? Surely there is a lot of different political persuasions out there. There's not just choice A and B. There's always third, fourth, and fifth political persuasions. There are many nuanced positions. The way it works is like this. Each major political party has various factions within the party, vying for control of the party to push the party in a particular direction. A more conservative direction, a more progressive direction. There are various factions within each party, all of them vying for control. Now, all these factions work as a single political party to defeat the other major party in a general election. Afterwards, they are most of the time pursuing their own agenda, whether it be in government or in opposition. They work together in the general election because they fear that if they do not, they will never be in a position of power or government. They have to work together for a core set of beliefs. A small amount, a few things that all of them subscribe to, while everything else, they can all have their own little disagreements. They do this because they fear that if they work on their own, they will never be in a position of power. Voters are equally loyal to the two political parties, because within each party is their one man or their one woman that they support, that they hope that they keep voting for that person within the major political party so that person can push the party in a particular direction and gain influence, whether that person becomes prime minister or gets a cabinet position, and can influence the party with his or her ideals. The Democrats have various factions. The Republicans have various factions within their parties in the United States. That's how it works. It's also a two-party system because, well, I already explained that. I don't have notes, so I have to sometimes I repeat myself. Excuse me. Now, a non-proportional system does not necessarily mean two strong parties. It can also result in a 100-party or 1,000-party system. A deeply shattered political culture, thousands of, a million pieces. This is the case in India and Papua New Guinea, where each district elects its own one-man party or independent MP. There are no major swings from one large party to another. There are all these one-man parties there. It's because the voters in these countries are all pursuing their own regional and local interests. Let me say that again. Pursuing their own regional and local interests. All the politicians from our local politicians who come from that area and promise to represent the interests of that region and not the national interest. And they're usually one-man, and there are so many one-man parties or one-woman parties and independent MPs. Every area in the country is pursuing their own interests. And as a result of the non-proportional system, whether it be instant runoff voting in the Papua New Guinea and first past the post in India, it's precisely because of the disproportionate system that they have so many parties, because every region is only pursuing their own interest. So, now we look at proportional representation. Let's look at the conventional wisdom that proportional representation creates multi-party politics. For the most part, yes, it does create multi-party politics in countries in Western Europe, particularly Germany, the Netherlands, the Scandinavian countries, Spain, not Spain, Italy, and various other countries. Multi-party politics. Now, under a proportional system that creates multi-party politics, you will see various parties in parliament. They enter parliament based on the proportion of their vote that they received, how many seats they win. So there will be small parties there will be large parties, there will be medium-sized parties. Voters in these countries have a wide range to choose on their political menu of political parties. Everyone can have a political home in these countries. That can have their own political party. And new parties can easily enter parliament, from 0 seats to 10 seats overnight in just one election. So, and voters know that what they vote for is what they get. So it results in many parties in parliament. Because people know what you vote is what you get. So they will vote for whichever party they desire. As a result, I apologize if I repeated this, it's several parties in parliament, everyone having their own party. And there are less factions within the political party because it's easy to form a political party and immediately enter parliament. Coalition governments are a very normal thing in Scandinavian countries, in Germany and in the Netherlands and in Belgium and various other Western Europe countries. Coalition governments, are a very normal thing. In Italy, however, the negative aspects of no overall control can be seen. Small parties are extremely demanding and they have the major parties' hands tied. This has resulted in over 60 governments since World War II. Now, let's look at the opposite. Proportional representation does not mean constantly divided parliaments. Political parties can be overwhelmingly popular and they can sometimes get overall majorities proportionally. Like the ANC in South Africa, for example. They have a one-party government under party list proportional representation. Or Malta, where there is a stable two-party system despite the fact that they use the proportional single transferable vote. And here is another interesting fact. When replacing a disproportionate system, you can actually significantly reduce the number of political parties in a parliament. Significantly reduce them. This was the case in Russia. Back in 2007, when Vladimir Putin changed the parliamentary voting system in Russia from supplementary member to just party lists, proportional, it created a strong one-party mandate for his party, United Russia. In the past, under supplementary member, the national parties, the larger national parties, got the list seats, whereas the smaller regional parties and independents got the district seats. When Vladimir Putin got rid of the district seats and had them all list seats, all the small parties and independents instantly vanished. And only only the large national parties, only 4 large national parties remained. This happened because voters in the regions understood that if they kept voting for local interests, for local parties and independents, they would be outvoted by the more urban areas, by the larger, more populous areas. And they could not get past the 7% threshold, which is very unfair. But nevertheless, they had to then focus on national trends and not regional interests. Local politics became national politics. So as you can see, you also have to see, I apologize, as you can see, there is no, when supporters of first past the post say, oh, it creates a stable two-party system, or when Americans who like the two-party system in the US, well, the US is a different, unique case, but when supporters of first past the post say, oh, it creates a stable two-party system, it's not true. And when they say, oh, then it's constantly permanent hung parliaments with proportional representation, it's simply not true. Every country is different. We don't know, you might not know what would the result be if you flipped it from non-proportional to proportional, or from proportional to non-proportional. Every country is different. I suspect that if you introduced proportional representation in India, the number of political parties would be significantly reduced. Because then they cannot get past, say, a 1% threshold, or a 4% threshold, or a 5% threshold. All those tiny parties will be, poof, gone. And it's important sometimes to, how do I put this? To understand that the voting system does not always produce the desired result. And you have to look at the country's political culture and voting patterns. Let me point out Canada. Now, while the UK, the United Kingdom has a most of the time stable two-party system, or 2.5-party system if you count the Lib Dems, but while the UK and Australia most of the time have stable two-party systems, I've looked at the history of elections in Canada. 1 out of every 4 elections held in Canada have resulted in hung parliaments, in minority governments. A quarter of the time, it has produced minority governments. Now, Canada uses first past the post. And when I looked at the voting patterns of the Canadian voters, they're usually not loyal to one party all the time. Unlike the United Kingdom, yes, the Canadian political parties have their base, but it's only a very small group of people. I have noticed that in the 2011 Canadian general election, many voters switched from almost unanimously, in droves, in large numbers, in just one election, from Bloc Québécois to the New Democrats, from the Liberals to the New Democrats, as well as in the early 90s when they moved from the Progressive Conservatives to the Reform Party. And then it became the Canadian Alliance, and then they merged with the Progressive Conservatives as one political party, which is now called the Conservative Party. But that's a different story. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is they did not have, the voters of Canada did not stay with one political party, say, I will vote for them all the time, this party, this party, this party. Once they saw another political party they liked, they were transplanted from one political party to another one. They moved in droves. It's like having 100 people in one room. And then 99 of them moving to a second room, and only one staying in the previous room, which is the old party. I hope that analogy makes some sense. So we can see that there is no strong base voters in Canada. And because it has produced frequent minority governments, hung parliaments in Canada, minority governments, this indicates that perhaps proportional representation is needed in Canada, as first past the post did not produce the desired two-party system that its proponents are always saying is so great. You can see what I mean here? And leaving and the result, just plain unfair voting system, which is first past the post, and only a minority of Canadians are actually represented. Okay. So, again, it's important to know your country's political culture before you impose a voting system on it. A voting system for representative democracy, of course. Okay, thanks for listening.